Bullying. It cuts deep, leaving scars that might never fully heal. It can warp someone's view of the world and themselves. But sometimes, the very people who seem the most powerless hold a strength the bullies can't even imagine. African folktales have been passed down for generations, weaving stories about morality, human nature, and overcoming impossible odds. Today on Mystic Moon Tales, I want to share one such tale. It's the story of a young girl born blind who faced the cruelty of those around her. In this video, we'll dive into this remarkable story of resilience. You'll see how even the deepest darkness cannot extinguish the spirit. And along the way, we may just discover some truths about ourselves. So if you're ready for a story that will touch your heart and stay with you long after, subscribe to Mystic Moon Tales and let's begin. Once upon a time, in a vibrant village nestled among the rolling hills, there lived a young girl named Naal. 10 years old, she navigated her surroundings with a grace honed by years of experience. Her slender build belied a surprising strength, cultivated from constantly reaching out and feeling her way through life. Her skin, the deep, rich hue of sun-baked earth, was smooth and flawless, except for a constellation of playful freckles sprinkled across the bridge of her nose. These freckles, a source of amusement for her before the world turned harsh, now seemed like a secret language, a map only she could decipher. Naal's hair, usually braided with intricate patterns by her loving grandmother, was as dark and rich as her skin. The only concession to her blindness was a single strand, always left loose, trailing down her cheek like a single searching tendril. It was a silent plea, a constant reminder of the world she couldn't see, a world that sometimes felt heartbreakingly distant. Despite the darkness that engulfed her vision, Naal possessed a spirit as vibrant as the village itself. But lately, that vibrancy had dimmed, replaced by a quiet sadness that clung to her like a shadow. Unlike the other children with their wide, curious eyes, Naal's world was veiled in darkness. She had been blind since birth. This difference made Naal a target. The other children whispered and pointed, their laughter sharp like thorns. Naal's heart would ache as they mimicked her careful steps, stumbling and pretending to be lost. Her gentle spirit, once bright and open, began to shrink. Days stretched into long, lonely stretches as she retreated to the quiet corners of her home, the echoes of unkind words ringing in her ears. The marketplace, once a source of delightful sounds and smells, had become a gauntlet for Naal. The boisterous energy of bartering and conversation now seemed laced with malice. Whispers followed her like angry bees, the word blind buzzing around her in accusatory tones. Sometimes she'd trip over a crate or basket, seemingly left in her path on purpose. Stifled giggles would erupt, and when she brushed her hands on the ground searching for the obstacle, she'd often find it had mysteriously vanished. The once familiar path to the well, where the village women gathered to draw water and exchange stories, had become treacherous. Naal's water pot would be accidentally knocked over, its precious contents spilling into the dust. The sound of the women's hushed murmurs stung worse than any physical blow. She could almost hear their thoughts, the pity mixed with disdain, painting her as weak and helpless. Worst of all were the games the children invented. They would scatter pebbles in her path, whispering false directions to confuse her. Sometimes they would form a circle around her, chanting cruel rhymes that twisted her name and mocked her disability. Naal would stand frozen in the center, small and alone, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. The weight of despair threatened to crush Naal completely. There seemed to be no escape from the relentless cruelty of the village. Then one day, as the afternoon sun beat down and the village square lay empty in the heat, a sound drifted towards Naal from the edge of the forest. It was a melody, mournful yet strangely hopeful, played on an instrument she did not recognize. Intrigued, and with a sliver of forgotten curiosity rekindling within her, Naal pushed aside her fear. With careful steps, she followed the sound, her hand brushing against the rough trunks of trees. The melody wavered, then grew stronger as she approached, as if leading her deeper into the woods. Finally, she reached a small clearing. There, bathed in dappled sunlight, sat an old woman. Her gnarled hands danced across a wooden instrument Naal had never seen before, a strange harp-like thing with strings that stretched like shimmering spider webs. The woman's eyes were closed, lost in the trance of her music. Naal hesitated. Should she run? Retreat back to the familiar sting of the village? But something, a whisper of defiance, urged her to stay. She sank down on a soft bed of moss and simply listened. The music seemed to wrap her in a strange kind of comfort, a balm to her wounded spirit. As the final notes faded, the old woman opened her eyes, milky and clouded with age. A gentle smile spread across her face. "I have been expecting you, child," she said, her voice soft as the rustling of leaves. Nala gasped, startled. How had the woman known she was there? Her fear spiked, but then was replaced by overwhelming curiosity. Who are you?" she stammered. "They call me Mama Zuri," the old woman replied. "I live on the edge of the forest, where the whispers of the village cannot reach." She gestured to the unusual instrument. "This is a kora. Its sound weaves stories and draws in lost souls." Naal had never heard the word kora before, but its music stirred something within her. Lost soul. Was that how she felt? Timidly, she reached out and touched the delicate strings. A shiver ran down her arm, the vibration tingling in her fingertips. "You have endured much, child," Mama Zuri said, her voice laced with kindness. "But there is a strength within you that the villagers cannot see." And so, day after day, Naal ventured into the forest, drawn by the music of the kora and the comforting presence of Mama Zuri. The old woman became her teacher, not in the ways of sight, but in the ways of resilience, inner strength, and the hidden power of the world around her. Under Mama Zuri's wise guidance, Naal began to transform. The old woman taught her to harness her other senses, to feel the subtle shifts in the breeze that revealed a person's approach, the minute vibrations in the earth that distinguished friend from foe. She learned to identify plants by the texture of their leaves and the unique scents they carried in the air. Mama Zuri encouraged Naal to listen, truly listen, to the tapestry of sounds that surrounded her. The songs of birds became a language, revealing secrets of the changing seasons and the patterns of the forest. Each footstep and rustle carried a story waiting to be understood. Most importantly, Mama Zuri helped Naal to find her own voice. The kora, once a strange and intimidating object, became an extension of her soul. Naal poured her sorrow, her anger, and her newfound strength into its strings. The music that emerged was raw, sometimes discordant, but always achingly beautiful. The forest clearing became Nala's sanctuary, a place where the cruel jeers of the village faded away. A strange kind of confidence began to grow within her, a confidence rooted not in sight, but in a deep understanding of herself and the world she couldn't see. It was a quiet kind of power, unnoticed at first, but with the potential to change everything. News of the strange music emanating from the forest eventually reached the village. The same children who had tormented Naal were the first to discover her hiding place, their cruelty fueled by newfound curiosity. They peered at her from behind the trees, whispering and giggling, ready to unleash a new round of taunts. But when Naal began to play, something unexpected happened. The children fell silent. One by one, they crept closer, drawn in by the haunting melodies of the kora. Despite themselves, they were captivated. The music seemed to speak a language they didn't understand, yet one that echoed somewhere deep inside them. With each note, Naal poured out her story, the pain of isolation, the sting of mockery, but also the newfound strength and wisdom that had blossomed under Mama Zuri's guidance. The children listened, their faces a mixture of confusion, shame, and a strange, dawning wonder. When the last note faded, a heavy silence descended upon the clearing. The children, the cruel bullies of the village, looked upon Naal with new eyes. For the first time, they saw not just a blind girl, but a person of remarkable spirit, whose music stirred emotions they couldn't fully comprehend. The seed of change had been planted. The change was subtle at first. Her music planted a seed of empathy in the village, but true transformation seemed like a distant dream. Naal began to accept that her role was to illuminate, not necessarily to heal. She found solace in Mama Zuri's wisdom and the ever-present beauty of the forest. One day, a stranger arrived in the village, a weathered traveler named Amadi with eyes that mirrored the vastness of the open sky. Hearing Naal's music drifting from the forest, he was drawn to the clearing. Intrigued and deeply moved, he introduced himself as a bard, a collector of tales and songs. Naala's story, the cruelty, the music, the quiet defiance, resonated deeply with the bard. He asked permission to record her melodies on his strange, wax cylinder contraption, to share her music with other villages, other towns, far beyond the rolling hills that had been her entire world. Hesitant at first, Naala eventually agreed. It seemed an echo of Mama Zuri's words about the lost souls the Kora could call in. Weeks later, Amadi left, his pack heavy with the recordings of Naal's unique sound. Years passed. Naal continued to fill the forest with her music. In the village, though not completely changed, settled into a strained kind of coexistence. Then one day a group of strangers arrived, their travel clothes dusty and excitement buzzing around them. They had come from a distant land, they proclaimed, drawn by the haunting melodies of a blind girl, whose music, they declared, had touched countless lives. The villagers were stunned. It turned out the bard had shared Naal's music far and wide. Her story of resilience and the raw beauty of her songs had inspired others, those facing their own struggles and those blinded by prejudice. Naal, the outcast, had become a symbol of hope far beyond anything she could imagine. This folktale reminds us that disabilities do not define a person's value. We must look beyond appearances and treat everyone with kindness. Naala's journey teaches us about inner strength and resilience. Even against overwhelming odds, she found her voice and embraced her unique path. Her story shows us that life is unpredictable. What seems like a weakness can become a source of power, and one person's courage can change the world. What did you learn from Naal's story? How can we apply this wisdom in our own lives? Share your thoughts below and let's stand against bullying. If you see someone being mistreated, speak up and offer support. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to Mystic Moon Tales for more.